Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today is the 16th of October, 2023. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So kicking off today is an announcement that came out Friday, and I talked about this announcement last week actually, and this was around the SEC appealing or not appealing their grayscale ruling. Now just for some refresher here, the SEC lost in court over this ruling a few weeks ago, I think it was, or maybe a little while ago now, where essentially the judge was like, why did you deny Grayscale's petition to convert their trust or their existing trust GBTC product into a proper spot ETF, and yeah, the judge was just like, it doesn't make any sense for that, and the SEC had the chance to appeal that ruling, and they ended up not appealing it on Friday there. So yeah, you can see here that James Seifert, one of the ETF analysts that I talk about on the Refuel quite regularly, is quote tweeting the news here, saying that he doesn't think they're going to appeal to the Supreme Court either, and dialogue between Grayscale and the SEC should begin this week, and hoping for more info on next steps sometime this week or the week after. So yeah, very positive news. I think not unexpected. I think it's very much expected news here, as I've been saying for I guess like a couple of months now. In particular, the SEC seems to have softened its stance on crypto, especially when it comes to the ETF stuff. Obviously, they recently approved the ETH futures ETFs, which was not necessarily a surprise, but definitely a positive development. Even though the products themselves are kind of like not great, it's more of a positive development for ETH, right? And how the SEC views ETH. And of course, we also have these spot BTC ETFs that I've discussed to death at this point that we can expect anytime really between now and I guess Jan 10th, which is that final deadline for ARK, the ARK spot Bitcoin ETF, because I really don't think they're going to deny ARKs and then force ARK to refile and then wait till mid-March for the rest of them to hit their deadline in order to approve it. I really do think that we could get an approval anytime between now and Jan 10th. Like that's the window right now. And, you know, it's like a 3-month window or something like that, right? 3-4 month window, and within that window, the SEC can can approve or deny, I guess, but can approve or deny the ETF at any time. The odds of them approving it, to me, are pretty much like 100%, like, well, not exactly 100%, but pretty much 100% at this point. I just don't see why they would deny it after doing all of this. You know, they didn't appeal this case. They've had an open dialogue with all the issuers for I guess a couple of months now. Obviously, BlackRock is one of the big heavy hitters in the entire kind of traditional financial system. So we all know what, them submitting an application for a spot Bitcoin ETF basically dramatically increased the chances back from a few months ago. So yeah, as I said, anytime between now and Jan 10th, which is the final deadline for the ARK spot ETF decision there, we can expect an approval or a denial. And as I said, I expect them all to be approved at the same time. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens after that, right? You guys know my play on this. I would much rather them approve it in the new year, right? In January, and then that will give us like the narrative fuel to begin the new year really, really well. And obviously I would expect positive price action to follow that. And then we have the Bitcoin halving in April, and it all just comes together as like a narrative soup, so to speak, where essentially it kickstarts the next bull market. That's kind of my thesis, 4-year cycle and stuff playing into it as well. And obviously things like the wider macro stuff you can make an argument for too, but I'm not going to go on about them all again. You guys know my thesis at this point, and really the bulk of the thesis is going to be defined in the next 6 to 9 months. I think if we're not out of the crab range in like 9 months, which I think we will be, but if we're not out of the crab range in like 9 months, I would start to begin to doubt my thesis, or at least I get a little bit worried. I'd be like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'm completely wrong on these things. But as it currently stands, as I've explained plenty of times on the Refuel before, nothing has changed my thesis yet. It seems to be playing out the exact same way still, and I really do think that we're in for a really positive year next year. But anyway, we'll keep you guys updated on the ETF news as things progress. All right, so it finally happened. The entry and exit queue for staking on Ethereum is now 0. So obviously the exit queue has been 0 for quite a while, but that's not news there. But the entry queue being 0 is news because it hasn't been 0 for quite a long time now, at least since obviously withdrawals were enabled back in April. But even before then, I don't think it was 0. I think it was always, there was always a queue there. So yeah, it is zero now. And you know what? This is the way Ethereum staking is supposed to work. It's supposed to find an equilibrium point where it doesn't actually make sense for more people to stake their ETH because the yields don't make enough sense for them. And if we look at the yields from the last, I guess, 7 days, we can actually see this play out exactly. So if we go here, and I'll just bring that up on my screen there from Radar.network, we can look the last 7 days. The yield is, if it wants to load, if I clicked it, yeah. So the yield is under 4%, right? It's 3.7%-ish across all of the different kind of staking providers here. So that seems to be the equilibrium between 3 and 4%. Now, as you guys know, the rewards are defined by the consensus layer rewards and the execution layer rewards. And the execution layer rewards have been quite small for a while now because gas fees are low, network activity overall is low because the market is very quiet, right? So it remains to be seen what happens. Obviously, in a bull market, we expect the network to get used heavily again and for gas fees to spike and all that stuff there. But generally, if you just look at the yield over the last 7 days, it's 3.7%. The last 30 days, I think it's a bit higher at about 4%. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense because the consensus layer rewards for everyone have gone down as well because of the fact that more stake has come online, and the execution layer rewards are down a lot because of the fact that the gas fees are lower. And there's less MEV payments because the MEV opportunities are lower thanks to the market being quiet, right? So that really is, I guess, the way Ethereum staking is designed, to find that equilibrium there. And this is why I pushed back on a lot of people who have said that they figured the amount of ETH staked would get to like 70 or 80% of all ETH, which is similar to what other networks have staked. And I've pushed back on this a lot of times in the past, actually, and for a very long time, because I don't think people still understand that ETH as an asset is not just a dumb staking token, right? There are so many more uses for ETH as an asset. And on top of that, ETH's monetary policy basically makes it uneconomical, or essentially makes it not make much sense in order for 70 or 80% of ETH to be staked. And on top of that as well, 70 or 80% of ETH staked would lead to a huge number of validators, which would probably make the network unstable to begin with. But we haven't done anything to prevent that. You know, that EIP 7514 churn limit EIP hasn't gone live yet. That's going live in Dencun. I mean, you guys know my argument about that. We don't even need it. And I think the fact that the queue is 0 is proof that we don't need it. But regardless of my opinions on it, that's not live yet. So we haven't actually changed anything. All that's happened is that the network has reached that equilibrium where essentially it is not worth it for a lot of people to stake right now because they think to themselves, well, you know, if I get between 3 and 4% yield on my ETH, whatever, maybe I can go get more elsewhere. Maybe they want to put their ETH into something else. I mean, obviously you can get an LST and use that within DeFi and stuff like that, or maybe we've basically tapped out all the people who are holding ETH and want to stake it at this point, because I think a lot of people are still holding ETH as obviously a store of value, and maybe they just don't want to stake it. They don't want to risk staking it. Maybe they don't want to solo stake, but they also don't want to risk staking it with a centralized exchange or with one of these LST providers, which is definitely a portion of the market as well. But generally, if you look at the amount of a percentage of ETH staked, it's only like 23%. So you can look at where all the other ETH is. You can do some on-chain analysis, stuff like that. A lot of it just sits with people who are basically using it as a store of value. You know, there is 77% of ETH that is not staked right now. So I kind of like implore people to go look at and see where that ETH actually is. And there's a bunch of different tools you can use. I've showed them before. There's Glassnode, Dune Analytics, a few others out there. Etherscan has some things there. You can actually see, you know, people are either trading it, holding it as a store of value, or it's in DeFi as well. There's obviously a lot of ETH locked up there. It's on L2s. And as I said just before, ETH is not just a dumb staking token. That's why you're not going to see a huge amount of ETH staked. Or at least that's one of the reasons why. Second reason is that ETH is not a dumb delegated proof of stake network, where essentially, in my mind, delegated proof of stake is fake staking, because you're not actually putting any capital at risk, right? There's no slashing risk or anything like that. For most of the DPoS networks, there's basically, okay, well, there's a validator, someone's running this validator, and then you can delegate your tokens to them, but your tokens are never actually at risk. So to me, it doesn't really do anything. It's kind of like an excuse for people to just kind of hold and stake the token in order to get a reward, and that reward is coming from fresh issuance, which means that you're getting diluted if you're not taking advantage of that. And usually these rewards are quite high as well, like up 5+%. And this is 5+% token inflation rate. This is not 5+% yield. This is actual token inflation rate. So if you're not staking your tokens, then you're being inflated away by that inflation rate. And on top of that, a lot of these L1s have other tokens that are unlocking as well, right? Such as investor tokens and team tokens. tokens. So when you look at it like that, like I just cannot consider delegated proof of stake to be a real proof of stake system. Maybe some sort of hybrid where there's still capital at risk, like the two-tiered staking stuff that I've spoken about a lot on the Refuel before. Maybe that could be better. Remains to be seen, of course, but I've just always been bearish on those models, because if there's no capital at stake, if there's no risk for the staker, so to speak, then what's the point? Because you're not giving any economic security to the network. It's not actually counting for anything. And really, a lot of the times it centralizes it too into a handful of different validator entities, which more often than not know each other, can collude with each other, can turn into a cartel. It's just a bunch of really bad incentives there. But anyway, enough of my rants about DPoS. Just wanted to highlight that the entry and exit queue are both at 0, and we've reached an equilibrium for now, which could change very quickly, mind you. I mean, if we do get that bull market in, or I guess like the beginnings of a bull market in Q1 next year, and the market really heats up again, and all the on-chain stuff gets going again, we could see gas easily spike to 30, 40, 50 Gwei, which will lead to a lot of new MEV revenue, which will definitely lead to a spike in people staking ETH again, because the yields will spike up, probably to 5+%. But again, it finds an equilibrium. And I'm just very curious to see what it actually looks like in the bull market, how much stake is actually going to be exiting, and will we end the bull market and the next bear market? Let's just say, let's look out 2 years plus time, right? 2-3 years plus time, what's the kind of amount of ETH stake going to look like? Is it going to still be 23%? Is it going to be less? Is it going to be more? It's going to be very curious. I'm going to be very curious to see how that all plays out there. But anyway, we're going to have to wait a while for that. Maybe Refuel number 2000 or something in 3 years time, right? But I'll be here. You guys know I will. But anyway, moving on. So Gajinda here put out an interesting little tweet on some analysis on Dencun. So this is an analysis based on DevNet 9. This is not based on mainnet, of course, or any of the test nets, because they are not on Dencun right now. But this is essentially looking at how blobs will affect your block import latency as a validator here. So this is actually one of the things that has been tested a lot, and this is one of the reasons why the blobs have been reduced in size, is because when you think about kind of propagating these blobs around the network and proposing blocks in time, you basically only have a short window to do it, because there is kind of like what's called a slot on Ethereum on the proof of stake, and that's 12 seconds. You know, sometimes people refer to it as, well, a lot of times people refer to it as a block, but the block portion of it, I believe, is only 2 seconds, whereas a slot is 12 seconds. So if you look at the chart here I've got in front of me, all of the blobs come in, you know, before 2 seconds. But the thing is depending on what kind of hardware you're running, it may take you longer to get that block. And it may take you longer to propagate the block or propose the block, and you may end up missing a block proposal if you take too long to do that, based on hardware and, of course, network latency as well here. Now, of course, there are things in the works to address overall network latency and network bandwidth, such as raising the max effective balance to reduce the number of validators on the network and stuff like that. But there's just a nice little analysis from Gajinda here that you can check out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But as I said, this is on DevNet 9. This is not on mainnet. This is not on any test nets yet, so these numbers will probably change from here, but you can see that most of the blobs basically get kind of processed within, what is it, I guess like 0.5 seconds. So yeah, they're definitely within the healthy range there. But if they were bigger, it will probably take longer, because as I said, they have been reduced in size from the original spec. But the thing about blobs is that we can just increase them again when we feel that there is time to do that again, or it is time to do that again, which I expect to happen as things progress there. But anyway, I'll link this tweet in the YouTube description below. You can go check it out for yourself. All right, Tony has a new ETH research post today, this time all about MEV-burn. So he titled this with, "In a post-MEV-burn world, some simulations and stats." So if you're interested into what what MEV-burn would look like if implemented on the network based on historical data, this post is for you, because Tony breaks it down. I'll link the post in the YouTube description below for you to check out, of course. But there's a bunch of nice little charts here, and he did summarize it in his kind of up the top here in a TLDR, where he said, MEV-burn has great potential in lowering the impact of MEV on the consensus layer incentives, but on the downside, it might not be capable of getting rid of MEV lotteries or disincentivizing denial of service attacks. Tired of reading the charts, are self-explanatory if you got the context. So this is another thing, I guess, in regards to the incentives that I was talking about earlier with that equilibrium. Like if we do MEV-burn, then we could the point of MEV-burn I think is twofold from my understanding. It's to smooth out MEV, and also to basically give the MEV back to everyone instead of just to validators, right? To all ETH holders, like we did with EIP 1559. But the big advantage is smoothing out MEV, which leads to less kind of like of these spikes that we see, and making sure that we can reach an equilibrium still with the amount of rewards that are being paid out to validators, of course. Because if we're burning it, then if we're burning most of it, then really the validator rewards aren't extremely volatile like they are today. Whereas I mentioned before, if the market heats up again, then straight away MEV rewards go up, gas fees go up, and it becomes a more of a volatile game where essentially people stake. But then if it goes down again, the equilibrium kind of finds it hard to reach, sort of thing. Finds it hard to reach that equilibrium there. So that's another thing that's being worked on here. But as I said before, MEV-burn is not something that's being considered for any upgrade just yet. I don't even believe there's an EIP for this yet. And if it was to be implemented, it probably wouldn't be till 2025 at the very earliest. But yeah, it's still an open research thing, and it's great to see more research coming out about this. You can go check out this post from Tony. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, the talk of the town over the last couple of weeks has been the vampire attacks, or various vampire attacks on Lido. So, of course, I've talked about Diva before and how they have a vampire attack on Lido right now. Well, Swell has launched their own. So, if you want to switch out of stETH into Swell ETH or SWETH, you can do so and earn 40 pearls here. Now, for those of you who don't know what pearls are, they're basically the point system that Swell is using to incentivize people to stake with them, and there will be some conversion to their token once they do release their token. I'm not sure what the token conversion rate is from pearls, but if you zap into SWETH using stETH, you get 40 pearls here. So 40 pearls are awarded per each SWETH zapped. So yeah, if you are thinking about changing from stETH to Swell ETH here, and you were maybe thinking about going with Diva or something else, you can choose here. You can either go with Diva or Swell. It depends. As I said, like, you're getting a certain reward with Diva for doing it. You're getting a certain reward with Swell for doing it. There's no telling what the monetary value is going to be as well, because you have to do assumptions based on what the token's going to be worth. But still, at this point in time, honestly, if I had stETH, I'd be doing either of these things. I wouldn't be doing it with everything because they're still risky. They're still newer protocols, especially Diva that's not even live yet, right? It's still very risky. But if I had any stETH, I would definitely do this. But you guys know I don't hold any stETH. I mean, I don't hold any LST. I solo stake everything, and I solo stake most of my ETH, and then the remainder of it I've put into Rocket Pool mini pools where I don't have RETH because I run the mini pools, right? I'm a node operator there. But if I did have stETH, I would definitely be going for this. Because of the fact that, one, it would nicely kind of like be a nice vampire attack against Lido to reduce their market share, and also on top of that, get me some reward for doing that as well. So you can go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. And speaking of Lido dominance, I don't know if you guys have paid attention to it recently, but it's actually been going down quite steadily. It's not down that much, and it's not really maybe worth paying attention to just yet, but something that I've definitely been watching. But I think that there is this kind of zone that Lido has hung around for 18 months now, between 28% and 32%. They've kind of hung around there. Now, until they're below 28% and we kind of break that zone that they've hung around in, I'm not going to get too excited, but anything that gets Lido's dominance down is good in my books. And as I've said before, it's not going to be people staking with the decentralized protocols. It's going to be people staking with anything, because anything that doesn't go to Lido is going to reduce Lido's market dominance, obviously. And there have been certain entities lately that have been getting a lot of inflows. One of them is called Figment. They've been getting a ton of inflows. You know, I think more than Lido, which is pretty crazy, because Lido still gets a lot of inflows. It's just overall their market share is going down here. But why I think it's important to continue to see their market share go down is because, one, it shows that the social layer stuff is working to basically encourage people to stake with other providers, but then the other providers are actually doing things and putting into motion things to attract people, such as the vampire attacks, such as the their token incentives, such as potentially proactively reaching out to large staking or large ETH holders and saying, hey, don't stake with Lido, stake with us, sort of thing, right? So that to me is extremely positive. So I'm loving seeing that, and I'm loving seeing Lido's dominance continue to come down. Because as I've said before, we seem to have stopped Lido's dominance from growing since withdrawals, basically. And now the fact that we're reversing it is an extremely positive sign in my eyes. But yeah, if you want to get involved in the vampire attack, if you do hold stETH, you can swap it to swETH for 40 pearls. And the thing is that even if you don't have stETH, what you can do is you can go and mint or buy stETH, and then you can swap it into swETH and get these pearls. So if you do have ETH, or maybe you have some dollars that you want to convert to ETH, you're probably better off buying stETH or minting it and then swapping it for swETH with pearls here, or putting it into Diva and then having it automatically swap to Diva ETH once they go live there. Because if you're holding stETH, you're still earning the yield there. So something to think about if you are interested and you are planning on staking more ETH. You can do this with any amount of ETH, I think. So that's a benefit as well. There's no need to get like any kind of minimum like 32 ETH or anything like that. And it's very simple to do. I should disclose that I'm an investor in Swell. I think you guys know that already, but I just want to disclose that there. But you guys know I'm highlighting this because I really want Lido's dominance to come down, and I really want to support the teams putting the words into action. So definitely go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so Devcon is coming. DevConnect is coming next month. Devcon in Southeast Asia is coming next year. Don't know when yet, don't know where yet, but the Devcon Twitter account has put out a blog post today saying that they've teamed up with the Ethereum Foundation Ecosystem Support Program to provide small sponsorships of up to $1,000 to support community events, meetups, and educational initiatives in Southeast Asia. So if you do live in Southeast Asia or want to organize something there and you are short on funds to do that, you can propose something to the Ethereum Foundation here in order to get some funds in order to run one of these things. So I'll link this blog post in the YouTube description below for you to check out, but the application deadline is the 31st of October. So you have 2 weeks from now, basically, to get your proposals in. But I love these things because really, at the end of the day, there are plenty of people who want to run things, but running things costs money, and a lot of, it's kind of like an outlay for you're not making any money on it, right? Like you could potentially sell tickets, but then you're being maybe exclusionary. So, and also like not many people want to pay for tickets to maybe smaller kind of meetups and things like that. So being able to run them for basically free because you're getting a grant from the Ethereum Foundation here is something that that I think is very positive. So yeah, you can go check this out. We'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so we speak a lot about alignment in the Ethereum ecosystem, and I think, it gets made fun of a lot, and it's not really well defined by a lot of people. I think I've defined it a bunch on the Refuel before, and you guys probably know what it means to be Ethereum aligned at this point, but this blog post from Abdel here, which you can go give a read, is probably the best thing that I have ever read on Ethereum alignment, because it's inherently hard to define what Ethereum alignment is. It lends itself to being made fun of because people just don't understand how powerful the social layer actually is and how much it actually defines. And also, if you say that you're Ethereum aligned, you're made fun of because of these other L1s who are like, Ethereum alignment means nothing. It's just a way for ETH maxis to pump their bags or something like that, when that is not the case at all. So if you do want to know what it means and get an overall definition, a very, very in-depth definition, mind you, I definitely recommend reading this blog post. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. But what I do want to point out here as well is something that happened. So I reviewed this blog post before Abdel put this out, and I gave him some feedback on it. But what I found amazing was that we both came up with the same framework independent of each other. So I read through the post, and then and then at the top I saw that he'd come up with the stETH framework. Now you guys know the stETH framework that I've come up with for blockchains, where I basically said that there's 3 main categories of a blockchain network or of a crypto network. There's the social category, the economic category, and the technical category. And you want to be in kind of like the middle of all 3 to create the best kind of and most vibrant ecosystem. Now, Abdul himself in this blog post at the very top puts this stETH framework right there. He says that the 3 types of alignment are cultural alignment, technical alignment, and economic alignment. Cultural alignment obviously being the social layer, technical being the technical layer, and economic being the economic layer. So what's funny to me is that I messaged him about this. I'm like, did you see my see threads about this, or did you just watch my video on this when I did the podcast with David on Bankless? He's like, no, I didn't actually. I came up with this on my own. I'm like, wow, that's actually really, really cool, because if both of us, who we don't actually talk very often, I mean, we talk from time to time, but it's not like I'm talking to him all the time and we're kind of like in sync brainwave wise, but the fact that both of us have independently come up with the same framework, it's not even a similar thing, it's exactly the same thing, right? Besides the word cultural here instead of social alignment, it basically means the same thing. We came up with the same thing. So that to me is incredibly powerful because it means that two people who, for those of you who don't know, Abdel works within the Starknet ecosystem, and obviously I'm more of a generalist within Ethereum, but for two people who work in different corners of the Ethereum ecosystem to come up with the same framework means that that is kind of the shelling point for what alignment is. Alignment is making sure that you align yourself with these three specific categories, being cultural, social, technical, and economic. And then those alignment kind of, what's the word I'm looking for here? Alignment spokes, you should say, kind of branch off into their own spokes and are defined by everything that connects into them. And that's exactly what Abdel has walked through in his blog post here. So as I said, just highly recommend reading this. This is probably the best content I've ever read on Ethereum alignment generally, because one, it's not talked about that much, and two, it just fits into everything that I would write. To be honest, I read through it, I'm like, holy shit, like this is everything I would have written if I was to write this blog post. We are so aligned on this, pun intended, right? We are so aligned on the alignment, which is quite funny. And he also has this really nice diagram that summarizes this as well, again using the a slightly modified version of the stETH framework, and about how everything just kind of branches off of it. As I was just talking about before, those spokes, you have the cultural, technical, and economic, and then you have everything branching off of that defines these things. In the technical category, you have things like research, protocol development, testing. In cultural, you have education, empowering individuals. And economic, you have obviously things like monetary policy, fees paid in ETH, all that sorts of stuff there. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to spoil this blog post for you because I really do recommend giving it a read, and I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so here, because as I said, it is an amazing blog post. It does the best job out of any blog post that I've seen at defining Ethereum alignment. So yeah, go check this one out. All right, speaking of blog posts, Merlo, who is an accountant and does a lot of tax-related stuff in Australia, and is also a Daily Gwei Discord channel frequent kind of contributor in the Daily Gwei Discord channel, I should say, has put out a blog post titled, "Who Should Hold Crypto in a Self-Managed Super Fund?" So for those of you who don't know, a self-managed super fund is basically, in Australia, we have things called super funds, and a self-managed super fund is one you manage yourself. The equivalent would be like a 401k in the US. So if you do live in Australia and you have been wondering about getting a self-managed super fund in order to manage your crypto in your super fund and buy crypto with it and stake ETH with it and things like that, like I have, you guys know that I have my own SMSF and it's all in ETH and I'm just staking that ETH. And this is the blog post for you. I'll link it in the YouTube description for you to check out. I think it really only applies to Australians, so obviously not relevant to anyone else that's not Australian. I think most of you aren't Australian that listen to the Refuel. But regardless of that, you can go check this out if you are. It's got a lot of great information here. And as I said, Merlo is very active in the Daily Gwei Discord channel. We have an accounting taxes channel in there. So if you want to join the Daily Gwei Discord channel and go in there and just tag Merlo, he'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have around tax in Australia and even beyond. I mean, he's been able to answer questions outside of Australia as well, but obviously his specialty is within Australia. And I should just give a shout out to the company he works for, Tax On Chain, as well. You can go check them out for yourself. But yeah, go check those out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, on that note, that's going to be it for today. So thank everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.